All right, today we're jumping into a huge story, a real clash between executive power and, well, the rule of law itself. It's all about power, where the legal lines are drawn, and what happens when the whole system gets pushed right to the edge. So let's get into it. And really, at the center of all this is a theme that, it sounds like something straight out of a political thriller, right? The idea that the Department of Justice could be used to go after your political enemies. It's a move that makes you ask some really big questions about what justice even means in a democracy. And that's the big question we're really digging into here. When you have the entire executive branch zeroing in on a few specific people, what happens when the courts, the judicial branch, say, nope, not so fast? Well, the answer, it's messy. And the whole thing starts with this just incredible reversal in federal court. Okay, so this brings us to the first major bombshell. And look, this wasn't just some small legal mistake. This was a federal judge taking a huge, high-profile case and just tearing it apart. Completely. So who were the targets? Two of the administration's biggest critics, for sure. You had James Comey, the ex-FBI director, and Letitia James, the attorney general from New York, who just won that big lawsuit against the Trump Organization. And these weren't minor charges either. Comey was accused of lying to Congress, James of mortgage fraud. And then, bam, a judge just throws it all out. Every single charge, gone. But here's the real kicker. The judge didn't dismiss the case because of the evidence, or because there wasn't any. The entire thing collapsed for one reason. The prosecutor who brought the charges, her appointment was illegal. And just like that, the story pivots from this political drama to a really fundamental question about the Constitution. So to really get how this could even happen, we've got to look at a very specific federal law. And it's a law that was put in place to stop exactly this kind of thing from ever happening. It all comes down to something called the 120-day rule. Think of it as a safety rail. It's there to make sure a president can't just put their loyalists into these powerful prosecutor jobs forever, totally sidestepping the Senate's job to approve them. It's a check on presidential power. And here's the key. After those 120 days, 4 months, the power to appoint that person shifts to the local district court judges. So the process, when it's done by the book, is super straightforward. It's just 2 steps. Step 1, the attorney general gets to pick an interim person for 120 days. Step 2, after that, the district court judges take over until a permanent U.S. attorney is confirmed by the Senate. Pretty simple, right? Well, you can probably guess that's not quite how it went down here. All right, so here's the maneuver they tried to pull to get around that law. First, the U.S. attorney who was already there, Eric Siebert, he gets pushed out. Why? Because he looked at the case and decided there just wasn't enough there to indict Comey and James. So then, instead of letting the district court make the next pick, like the law says you have to, the attorney general just names Lindsay Holligan as a new interim prosecutor. The idea was basically to hit the reset button on that 120-day clock. But Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, she saw exactly what was going on. And she ruled that this move wasn't just breaking a rule, it was flat out unconstitutional. Her decision basically nullified everything Halligan had done as a U.S. attorney. All of it, including getting those grand jury indictments. Poof, gone. And man, her reasoning was powerful. She wrote, and I'm quoting here, "The government could send any private citizen off the street into the grand jury room to secure an indictment. That cannot be the law." What she was saying is, if we let this stand, what's to stop the government from just picking anyone to be a prosecutor? It would set an incredibly dangerous precedent. After that ruling came down, James Comey put out a video, and he did not mince words. He said, look, this isn't just about me. He framed it as sending a clear message that no president, doesn't matter what party, can be allowed to use the justice system as a weapon to target political enemies. He called it a fundamental threat to the rule of law. But believe it or not, the story doesn't stop there. After getting shut down hard by the courts, the administration shifted gears. They pivoted to a completely different battlefield. And, in a lot of ways, a much more alarming one, the military. And this pivot, this was a major escalation. We're not just talking about legal fights over appointments anymore. Now we're talking about accusations of sedition being thrown at members of Congress. So what set this all off? It was a video. 6 lawmakers, one of them a combat vet, put out a video reminding troops about their sworn duty to refuse any unlawful orders. Now, this is standard stuff in the military, part of their basic training, but the administration spun it as a direct assault on the chain of command. And the reaction was just, wow. extreme. The administration and its allies didn't just say they disagreed. No, they called this reminder of basic military law, seditious behavior. And then they even pointed out that sedition is punishable by death. I mean, the rhetoric was cranked up to 11. And pretty quickly, this whole campaign started to zero in on one person in particular, a very high-profile target, and a guy with a service record that is just beyond distinguished. To really get how wild this was, you have to look at who they were going after: Senator Mark Kelly. I mean, we're talking about a decorated Navy combat pilot, 39 missions in Desert Storm, a retired NASA astronaut who commanded the space shuttle. This is the guy whose entire life has been about serving his country. Then came this absolutely incredible move. The Department of War's social media account, yeah, you heard that right, announced a formal investigation into Senator Kelly. And they actually floated the idea that he, a sitting U.S. senator, could be recalled to active duty just so he could be court-martialed. Well, Senator Kelly's response was fast, and it was defiant. He basically said, if you think this is going to intimidate me, you're wrong. He framed this whole thing not just as an attack on him personally, but as an attack on the Constitution itself, on Congress's job to keep the executive branch in check. He called them bullies and said there was no way he was going to be silenced. Okay, so let's pull back for a second and tie these two wild stories together. What's the big picture? What's the main takeaway from all of this? What we've really looked at here are two different plays from the same book. The first was an attempt to use the regular court system, which got shut down cold by a judge who just followed the law. The second was a pivot to the military, using this incredibly loaded language, sedition, court-martials against a sitting lawmaker. You know, law professor John Pfaff had a great quote that kind of summed up how reckless that second approach was. He said there was clearly no adult in the room to say, wait, maybe don't go after the charismatic war hero turned literal astronaut. And that really gets to the heart of it, right? It suggests this was a move made out of pure anger, not strategy, without thinking about the blowback of going after someone so respected. And all this leaves us with one last really big question. In this whole saga, we saw a federal judge, we saw former officials, we saw a sitting senator, all of them pushing back. And it kind of makes you think that when our institutions are really tested, it's up to the people inside them to defend the line. It's a powerful reminder that the rule of law isn't just some fancy phrase. It's something real, and it has to be defended actively by people willing to stand up.